The rain was doing that Lagos thing, pouring like heaven itself had a grudge, when Chiamaka Eze and Beverly Okoro packed their entire lives into 2 Ghana must-go bags and left the university hostel for the very last time. Chiamaka, if you don't hold this bag well, I will disown you as a friend, Beverly said, struggling with a bag that seemed to weigh more than her ambitions. Disown me, Kwa? After I've known you since primary 3. Beverly, please, even your mother cannot disown me. I am family now, permanently, like a bad debt. They laughed the way only people who had survived the same struggles could laugh. Loud, unfiltered, healing.
Growing up in Ajegunle, Chiamaka and Beverly had shared more than a classroom. They had shared akara on days there was no money for bread, shared school uniforms when ones got torn, shared secrets under mosquito nets, and shared the quiet, fierce belief that university would be their way out. Their parents, a taxi driver and a seamstress, a cleaner and a bricklayer, had scraped, borrowed, and prayed to get them through school. 4 years, countless exam fee panics, and one very dramatic ASU strike later, they had walked across that convocation stage, gowns flapping, hats full. Now they were graduates, certificates in hand, hope in their chests, empty pockets in their bags.
The 1-bedroom apartment they moved into in Yaba was, to put it politely, an insult to the word apartment. The bathroom door didn't close all the way. You had to sing loudly to warn whoever was outside. The kitchen was a corner with a gas cooker balanced on a stool that wobbled if you looked at it wrong. And there was exactly one window, which faced directly into their neighbor's chicken coop. Beverly, wake up. The chicken is doing its morning devotion again, Chiamaka groaned one morning, pillow over her face. Let the chicken preach. At least somebody in this house is employed. They both burst into laughter, the kind that comes easier when you decide humor is cheaper than despair.
Grocery shopping became its own comedy show. Every Saturday, they'd walk to the market with exactly 2,000 naira between them, negotiating like their lives depended on it, because honestly, it kind of did. Madam, this tomato is looking at me with attitude. Reduce the price, Beverly told one exhausted trader, who simply stared at her before bursting out laughing and knocking off 50 naira just to make her go away. You are embarrassing us, Chiamaka whispered, dragging her away. Embarrassing? Chi, we saved 50 naira. 50 naira today is bread tomorrow. Never underestimate market comedy.
Back home, they'd split whatever they'd bought with the precision of nuclear scientists. 1 cup of rice, half a Maggi cube, a splash of oil measured like gold. Every morning, they woke early, ironed the same 2 interview outfits they owned, rotating blouses to make it look like they had more, and set out into Lagos with CVs printed at the cyber cafe for 50 naira a copy. They memorized bus routes, learned which company receptionists were kind and which ones treated visitors like inconveniences, and perfected the art of walking into an office looking confident on an empty stomach. And every evening, they came back with nothing.
We regret to inform you. The position has been filled. We will get back to you. They never did. There was one particularly brutal week where they were rejected from 4 interviews in 5 days, one of them by a man who looked at Chiamaka's CV for exactly 3 seconds before saying, "You don't have experience." To which Beverly, waiting outside, later said, "Experience? Chi, we just left school now. Do they want us to have experience from the womb?" After the 11th rejection in 1 month, Beverly sat on the floor of their tiny room, back against the wall, staring at nothing.
Chiamaka, what if this is it? What if this is just our life now? Chiamaka sat beside her, bumping shoulders. Beverly Upuru, look at me. We have survived JAMB. We have survived hostel food. We have survived that lecturer, Dr. Adeyanju, who failed half the class for attitude.
You want to tell me a few rejection letters will kill us? I'm just tired, Chi. I know. Me too. But we said it from the beginning. We rise together, or we don't rise at all. So cry today if you want, but tomorrow we iron that blouse again. They shared the last of a small bag of curry that night, mixed with sugar and groundnuts because there was nothing else. And somehow, laughing about how premium their meal was. 5-star Gary, my sister, eat well. It felt like enough.
2 weeks later, on a grey Tuesday, when both of them were seriously beginning to consider Beverly's cousin's suggestion of learning hairdressing small, Chiamaka's phone rang. An unknown number. Hello, is this Miss Chiamaka Eze? She nearly dropped the phone. Yes, this is she. This is HR from Meridian Group. Would like to offer you the position of Junior Client Associate. Chiamaka couldn't speak. She just stared at Beverly, mouthing nothing, eyes wide like she'd seen a ghost, a very well-dressed, corporate ghost with his salary. Not even 10 minutes later, as Chiamaka was still screaming and hugging every piece of furniture in the room, Beverly's phone rang too.
Same company, different department, marketing associate. They stood in the middle of that tiny room, the one with the broken bathroom door and the preaching chicken, and screamed until the neighbors banged on the wall. Beverly! Beverly! Same company! God is not a man, oh. God is not a man! They danced badly, cried a little, and Chiamaka, ever the dramatic one, dropped to her knees and shouted, Ajegunle, thank you for producing us. That night, they didn't sleep much. They lay on the same mattress they'd shared for months, staring at the ceiling, whispering plans, what they'd buy their mothers, whether they'd finally get a fridge that didn't make that dying good noise, whether Lagos traffic would kill them before their first salary did.
Work was a different world entirely. Air conditioning, actual chairs that didn't wobble, and a cafeteria where you didn't have to argue about who ate more of the gari. They resumed on the same day, walked in together holding hands like two soldiers going to battle, and by lunchtime had already made an enemy of exactly one nosy colleague named Patricia, who just had to know why 2 new employees were so close, like sisters or something more. Patricia, please face your salad, Beverly had said sweetly, and Chiamaka nearly choked laughing. Office life came with its own curriculum. They learned that let's circle back meant nobody wanted to answer your question, that the printer on the 3rd floor hated everyone equally, and that free coffee in the break room was the closest thing to religion some of their colleagues had. 3 months in, they upgraded from the Yabashu box to a proper 2-bedroom in a quieter part of town. Real tiles, a kitchen you could actually stand in, and lighting so good, Beverly declared they'd finally graduated from village to city. Chi, feel this light switch. Feel it. It doesn't spark when you touch it. We have arrived. Beverly, you're too easily impressed. Say that again when you remember the extension box we used to share with the fridge, the fan, and your hot comb. That thing could catch fire from ambition alone. Then, instead of the usual probation review, both of them were called into separate offices on the same Friday. Chiamaka came out first, hand over her mouth. Then Beverly, practically floating.
Don't tell me, Chiamaka said. You don't tell me first. Promotion! They screamed together, right there in the office corridor, causing 3 people to spill their coffee and Patricia to roll her eyes so hard it was practically an act of worship. That night, they bought suya to celebrate, proper suya, extra onions, no counting pieces, and sat on their new balcony overlooking the estate. We did it, Chi, Beverly said quietly, looking out at the lights. We actually did it. We did, Chiamaka smiled. Ajegunle to balcony life. Somebody should write a book. You'll be the one to write it. I'll just take 50% of the royalties for emotional labor. They laughed, clinked their bottles of Chapman together,
and let themselves, just for one night, believe that the hardest part was finally behind them. Neither of them noticed that Friday evening how a certain someone from the finance department had watched Chiamaka laughing in the corridor earlier that day and hadn't quite stopped thinking about it since.
His name was Kelvin Okafor, and he had the kind of face that made women in the office suddenly develop urgent business in the finance department. Tall, clean-shaven, with the quiet confidence of a man who knew his numbers and his worth, Kelvin had transferred from the Port Harcourt branch 2 months before Chiamaka and Beverly even resumed. He kept mostly to himself, until the day he saw Chiamaka laughing in the corridor, her long black silky hair swinging as she threw her head back at something Beverly said, gold hoops catching the fluorescent light, and something in his chest simply paused. He didn't say anything about it. Men like Kelvin rarely did. He just started finding reasons to walk past the client associate's floor.
Chi, Beverly said one afternoon, poking her head over the partition between their desks. Why does Finance Kelvin keep walking past here like he's doing an inspection? This is the 4th time today. Chiamaka didn't even look up from her laptop. Beverly, focus on your work. Not everybody who walks past is coming for you people's drama. I didn't say he was coming for drama. I said he was coming for you. There's a difference. Wake up and smell the cologne, my sister. The man practically leaves a trail like Hansel and Gretel. Chiamaka rolled her eyes, but a small smile betrayed her. Beverly, I don't have time for men. I have time for rent, promotions, and my sanity, in that order. That's what they all say before they end up planning a whole wedding in their village.
The thing about Kelvin was that he was patient, almost frustratingly so. He didn't ask for Chiamaka's number the first week or the second. Instead, he did small, deliberate things. Sent her department a genuinely useful budget template nobody asked for, complimented her presentation in a meeting without making it weird, and once, memorably, defended her idea when a senior manager tried to shoot it down. That was actually a solid point Miss Eze raised, he'd said simply, and sat back down like it was nothing. Chiamaka had stared at him for a full 3 seconds too long. Beverly, sitting 2 seats away, had noticed everything. The stare, the 3 seconds, the way Chiamaka suddenly became very interested in her notepad afterward.
What Beverly hadn't expected was the flutter in her own chest a week later, when Kelvin stopped by her desk instead, holding a file. Beverly, right? I need marketing's input on this campaign budget. You're the one handling the Lagos launch? That's me, Beverly said, straightening up so fast she nearly knocked over her coffee. He smiled, an easy, unfair kind of smile, and for the next 20 minutes, they talked numbers, campaigns, and somehow, without either of them noticing, 3 separate jokes that had nothing to do with work. When he finally left, Beverly sat very still for a moment, then turned slowly toward Chiamaka's desk.
Chi? I think I like Finance Kelvin. Chiamaka's head snapped up so fast her silky hair swung across her face. Beverly Okoro, you just told me last week the man was coming for me. I know what I said, but that was before he smiled at me like that. Chi, that smile should be registered as a weapon. I nearly forgot my own campaign numbers. So today he's yours, and yesterday he was mine. Beverly, this man is not jollof rice that we share portions of.
Beverly burst out laughing, but underneath the joke, something had genuinely shifted in her. She started dressing a little sharper on days she knew finance had interdepartment meetings. She started casually walking past his floor, the way he used to walk past theirs. Her blonde wig, freshly styled, always immaculate, got an unusual amount of attention that month. The problem was simple, and like most simple problems, nobody wanted to say it out loud. Kelvin liked Chiamaka, not Beverly. He was kind to Beverly, friendly even, because that was his nature. But the way his eyes lingered,
the way his voice softened, the way he always somehow ended up seated near Chiamaka at office lunches. None of that changed, no matter how sharp Beverly's outfits got. Chiamaka noticed it. Chiamaka also, very deliberately, ignored it.
Beverly is my sister, she told herself one night, staring at the ceiling of their nice new bedroom with the good lighting. I am not about to let one fine man with a nice smile and clearly excellent taste in budget templates ruin 20 years of friendship. So she did what she thought was the responsible thing. She kept Kelvin at a polite, professional distance and said his messages with the enthusiasm of a bank statement, and redirected every conversation that veered too personal. Kelvin, confused but not deterred, simply waited longer. Beverly, meanwhile, mistook Chiamaka's distance from Kelvin as disinterest, and disinterest as an opening.
Chi, since you don't want him, Beverly said one evening, painting her nails on the balcony with theatrical casualness, you won't mind if I, explore? Chiamaka should have said something, should have told her the truth, that Kelvin's eyes followed her, not Beverly, across every room they were both in. But she was tired, and it was late, and some small, guilty, foolish part of her, the part that liked the way Kelvin said her name, stayed quiet. Explore all you want, Chiamaka said instead, eyes on her phone. I have no claims on the man. Beverly beamed. Perfect. Wish me luck. Cupid is loading.
Beverly's exploration started with a WhatsApp message, so carefully drafted, it took her 45 minutes and 3 redrafts. Hey Kelvin, thanks again for your help with the campaign budget. Was actually wondering if you're free for coffee sometime. Figure we could brainstorm more ideas outside the office. She read it to Chiamaka before sending, pacing the living room like a lawyer rehearsing closing arguments. Is it too forward? Chi, be honest. Is the emoji too much? Beverly, it's a smiley face, not a marriage proposal. Just send it. Okay, sending, now.
She hit send with a dramatic flair of someone launching a rocket, then threw her phone onto the couch cushion like it had personally wronged her. I can't look at it. Tell me when he replies. Chiamaka picked up the phone, glanced at the screen, and felt something twist quietly in her stomach as the delivered turned to read almost instantly. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Sure, happy to grab coffee. Always good to talk shop. Beverly screamed into a couch pillow. Chiamaka smiled the way you smile when you are genuinely trying to be happy for someone and mostly succeeding. Talk shop, Beverly repeated, hugging the pillow like a prize. Chi, that's basically a date. Men just don't know how to phrase things romantically. It's a cultural handicap.
The coffee date happened on a Thursday at a small cafe near the office with the kind of overpriced pastries that mostly existed to make people feel corporate. Beverly wore her best blonde wig, freshly laid, and a dress she'd ironed twice out of nervous energy. It went fine. Better than fine, even. Kelvin was polite, attentive, funny in his dry, understated way. They talked about the campaign, then about Port Harcourt, and then, somehow, about their families. But every few minutes, almost involuntarily, Kelvin's phone would light up. And Beverly noticed, though she tried hard not to, how quickly his eyes flicked to check if it was a certain someone, and how his shoulders dropped, just slightly, when it wasn't.
You and Chiamaka are close, he said at one point, stirring his coffee absently. You two came in together, didn't you? Same day, different departments. Best friends since primary 3, Beverly said, pride creeping into her voice despite herself. "She's basically my sister. We survived a lot together before all this." "That's rare," Kelvin said, and something in the way he said it, soft, almost wistful, made Beverly's stomach quietly sink, though she couldn't yet say why. The date ended with a friendly hug and a promise to do this again sometime, which Beverly chose to interpret as wildly encouraging. She floated back to the office. She floated home. She told Chiamaka every detail twice, complete with reenactments.
What she didn't know, what she wouldn't find out until 3 days later, was that later that same evening, Kelvin had finally worked up the courage to send a different message, not to Beverly, to Chiamaka. "Chiamaka, I hope this isn't weird. I've wanted to say this for a while now, but I kept chickening out. I think you are brilliant and funny, and honestly, the best part of my week is running into you at work. I know you've been keeping some distance, and I respect that, but I'd regret it more if I never said anything. Would you ever consider having dinner with me? No pressure at all." Chiamaka read it 4 times in her room that night, heart hammering, phone screen lighting up her face in the dark. She thought about Beverly, glowing in the next room over, her successful coffee date. She thought about 20 years of friendship. She thought about how unfair it was that her heart didn't care about any of that. She typed a reply, deleted it. Typed another, deleted that too. Finally, "Kelvin, I'm flattered truly, but I can't. My best friend likes you, and I won't do that to her. I hope you understand." His reply came fast.
"I understand you are loyal. That's actually one of the things I admire about you. But I have to be honest. I've never seen Beverly the way I see you. I didn't encourage anything with her, I promise. I had to tell someone the truth, even if the timing is terrible." Chiamaka sat with that message for a long time. Phone glowing, house quiet, except for Beverly's faint humming from the kitchen. Happy, hopeful humming. The sound of someone building a future in her head that didn't exist. Chiamaka didn't reply to Kelvin that night. She told herself she was protecting Beverly, protecting the friendship, doing the right thing. But she didn't tell Beverly about the message either. And silence, she would learn, has a way of rotting quietly until it explodes.
The truth came out the way truth in small offices always does. Badly, publicly, and at the worst possible time. It was during the department's monthly mixer. Drinks and small chops in the main hall. Everyone a little looser than usual. Patricia, of course it was Patricia, had had one too many glasses of wine and far too much interest in gossip that wasn't hers to spread. "Beverly," she called out, weaving over with the confidence of a woman who thought she was doing a public service. "I have to ask, did anything ever happen with you and Kelvin? Because Amaka in HR said he told someone in Ops he's not interested in anyone right now, except..." She paused for effect, clearly enjoying herself. "Your friend, Chiamaka."
The hall didn't go silent, not exactly. But for Beverly, it might as well have. "What?" Beverly said, her smile freezing in place. "Oh," Patricia's face flickered, some small guilty part of her realizing too late what she'd done. "Oh, I just assumed you knew. I'm sure it's nothing." But Beverly had already turned, scanning the room, and found Chiamaka standing near the drinks table, glass in hand, face draining of color the moment their eyes met. She knew. Beverly could see it instantly.
The way you can always see guilt on the face of someone you've known since primary 3. Chiamaka knew, and she hadn't said a word. Beverly walked over, voice tight, forcing calm into every syllable. Chi, is it true?
The music kept playing. Somewhere, a colleague laughed too loudly at something unrelated. But between the two of them, the whole world had gone very quiet. Beverly, Chiamaka started. I wanted to tell you. I just answer the question. Chiamaka set her glass down slowly, hands unsteady. He messaged me a few days ago. I told him no, Beverly. I told him I couldn't. Because of you. So you knew. Beverly's voice cracked, not with volume, but with something worse. Quiet devastation. This whole time, while I was picking outfits and rehearsing WhatsApp messages and telling you every single detail, like a fool, you knew he wanted you, and you said nothing.
I was trying to protect you. Don't. Beverly's eyes were bright, furious, wounded in a way Chiamaka had never seen directed at her before. Don't you dare say you are protecting me. You are protecting yourself. You wanted to see how far it would go without having to choose. That's not fair, isn't it? Beverly laughed, sharp and humorless. We've shared everything, Chiamaka. Everything. Food when there was none, a room the size of a matchbox, jobs, promotions, everything. And the one time it actually mattered, you couldn't share the truth. She turned and walked out of the hall, ignoring Chiamaka's voice calling after her, ignoring the stares of colleagues pretending not to watch the entire thing unfold.
Chiamaka stood frozen by the drinks table, the mixer's music suddenly feeling obscene, aware with a sick, sinking certainty that something between her and Beverly had just cracked in a way that no apology was going to easily fix. Across the room, Kelvin watched the whole thing happen, drink halfway to his mouth, wondering far too late whether telling the truth had been worth the price. Two best friends were about to pay for it.
Beverly didn't cry when she got home that night. She wanted to. Some part of her ached for the release of it. But instead, she sat on the balcony where they'd celebrated with Suya and Chapman only months before, staring at the same estate lights that had once felt like proof they'd made it, and let something colder settle in her chest instead. Chiamaka tried that night and for several after. She knocked on Beverly's door with crates of food that went untouched. She left voice notes that were never opened. She even wrote a long, heartfelt message explaining everything, the silence, the guilt, the impossible position she'd felt trapped in, and watched the single blue tick sit there, unanswered, for 3 days straight.
Beverly, please, Chiamaka said one evening, standing outside her bedroom door. I know I hurt you. I know I should have told you immediately. But we've been through worse than this. We survived worse than this. From behind the door, Beverly's voice came flat and quiet. We survived poverty together, Chiamaka, not betrayal. Those are not the same struggle. After that, Beverly stopped speaking to her almost entirely. Polite nods in the hallway of their shared apartment, clipped good mornings, nothing more. She started coming home late. She started, without really admitting it to herself, watching Chiamaka's every move at work with a new, sharper kind of attention.
At the office, things were no longer simple either. Kelvin and Chiamaka had started seeing each other quietly, careful, guilty, half-happy. And though they tried to keep it professional at work, Lagos offices have never once in history managed to keep a secret past 2 weeks. Word spread. Whispers followed Chiamaka down hallways. Patricia, delighted to have fresh material, made sure of that. And with every whisper, every knowing glance thrown Chiamaka's way,
Something in Beverly twisted tighter.
It wasn't just about Kelvin anymore, not really. It was watching Chiamaka rise, again, effortlessly, the way she always seemed to. First the job, then the promotion, now even the man Beverly had wanted. It was standing in the shadow of someone she'd once shared everything with, and realizing, bitterly, that she was tired of sharing. The jealousy, once it took root, didn't announce itself loudly. It grew quietly, in small decisions. It grew the day Beverly accidentally left Chiamaka off the invite list for a client meeting Chiamaka had spent 2 weeks preparing for. It grew the day she forgot to forward an urgent email that made Chiamaka look unresponsive to a major client.
And it bloomed fully, finally, the day Chiamaka was up for a major account, the biggest of her young career, and Beverly, who had quiet access to the shared drive from an old project, made one small, deliberate change to a client figure in Chiamaka's presentation deck the night before her big pitch. One number, just one, but it was enough.
The pitch meeting was packed. Senior management, the client's team, even the regional director had flown in. Chiamaka stood at the front of the room, confident, polished, completely unaware that the numbers behind her had been quietly sabotaged. And as you can see, she said, clicking to the projection slide, our estimated cost savings for year 1 alone come to... She stopped, frowned slightly. The number on the screen didn't match the number in her notes. It was off by a devastating margin, the kind of error that made an entire proposal look careless, unprofessional, dangerous to trust with a multi-million naira account. The client's lead exchanged a look with a colleague. The regional director's face tightened.
Chiamaka tried to recover, tried to explain, but the damage sat there, on the screen for everyone to see. The meeting ended awkwardly, the client's enthusiasm visibly cooled, and Chiamaka walked out of that boardroom feeling, for the first time since she joined the company, genuinely humiliated. I don't understand, she said later, sitting numbly at her desk, scrolling back through the file's edit history with shaking hands. I checked these numbers 12 times. I know I did. And then she saw it, the last edit, made at 11:47 the previous night, from an account that hadn't been used in months, but one she recognized instantly, because she'd helped set it up herself, back when they were both new, back when they still shared everything, including login credentials neither of them had ever bothered to change.
Chiamaka found her by the stairwell, the one place in the building quiet enough for what needed to be said. You changed my numbers. It wasn't a question. Beverly didn't even try to lie. Something almost like relief crossed her face, as if she'd been waiting, tired of carrying the secret alone. Yes. The single word landed harder than any excuse could have. Why, Beverly? Do you understand what you did? That account, that pitch, I worked for months.
And I worked for months too. Beverly's composure finally cracked, voice rising, echoing off the concrete stairwell. Only nobody ever seems to notice when I do. You get the guy, you get the glow up, you get the promotion that always somehow feels a little bigger than mine. I am tired, Chiamaka. I am tired of being the friend who claps for you. So you tried to destroy my career? I tried, Beverly said, voice shaking now, to feel like I mattered too. The words hung between them, ugly and honest, 20 years of history collapsing quietly into a stairwell that smelled like industrial cleaner and betrayal. We came from nothing together, Chiamaka said softly, tears finally slipping free. We shared Gary when we had nothing else, Beverly, and you would throw that away because of a promotion and a man?
It was never just about the promotion or the man. Beverly wiped her face angrily, refusing to let the tears win. It was about finally being seen as more than your shadow. You were never my shadow, Chiamaka whispered. You were my sister. Where? Beverly said quietly. And the word landed like a door closing. Past tense feels about right now, doesn't it? She walked past Chiamaka, down the stairs, out of the building, and though neither of them said it out loud in that moment, out of the friendship they had built, brick by careful brick, since they were children with nothing but each other.
She never did find out where Beverly ended up. Lagos has a way of swallowing people whole when they want to disappear. And somewhere across that same sprawling, indifferent city, Beverly sat alone in a new, smaller apartment, staring at her own phone, at a number she no longer had the courage to dial, wondering if some things, once broken by jealousy, could ever truly be forgiven, or if some friendships, no matter how deep their roots, simply weren't built to survive success.